get started. Recording is up, and then I'll just be a minute or so while I'm looking for something to talk about.
Alright, sure.
Okay. Okay, nice grass. I want to turn down volume half a second. Okay, some pretty solid grasps. Okay, we might talk about some shield usage in a moment, and then maybe cover usage, but we'll keep going here. Oh, really nice. Okay, so already grasps are doing fantastic. We're using them at the right timings. We're not holding on to them. Obviously, you just ate an ultimate, so that's really good.
Alright, cool.
All right. Yet we're going to discuss some other things in terms of your gameplay real quick.
Alright.
So, firstly, let's talk cover usage. So, this is something that will apply on Sigma, and then also like pretty much every other character in the game. And that is that if we are standing right here, and the enemy team is standing right there, and they're all looking at us, shooting at us, yada yada, then if we're trying to run away and get away from the damage, we have to go 1, 2, 3 seconds, and then at this point you cannot shoot through solid objects, right? Solid objects are safety. They're going to keep you from taking damage, and yet in that time it took us to walk here, we died. Whereas what we can do is if we're standing right here, we'll now notice how it takes us half a second to duck behind cover from these guys, which is going to be like 6 times faster than what it just took us previously from all the way up there. So therefore, good positioning is the usage of cover, whereas bad positioning is the absence of cover. The further away we stray from cover, the worse your positioning is going to be. And covers all over the place. You have stuff like slopes, like so. You have pillars so that you can use like in between your shots when you're, characters that reload when you're reloading. Corners do the same thing when you're being shot at, taking damage. Maybe using random objects like the payload. Pillar, corner, doorway, corner, doorway. On top of that, all of high ground acts as natural cover when we're above them. Notice how they can see us. Now they can't. They can see us. Oh, crouching doesn't really do as much in Sigma, but we can just back up away from the ledge. And now they can't see us as much, so that's going to add an additional layer of survivability. So make sure you're using cover. That's going to be a fantastic way to negate damage. So when we're trying to push in aggressively, go from cover to cover to cover. Don't just kind of walk straight down main, and then that kind of got us shredded twice in a row. Yeah, then all that making sense? Any questions on that?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Gotcha. Shield usage. So now when it comes to shield usage, you do not want to be shielding against every little itsy bitsy bit of damage, against all the spam damage, because that's going to just kind of shred through your shield. Like if we're just plopping up shield without a purpose, then we're not going to have shield for when we actually need it. Whereas, your grasp, but maybe you can put it up a bit more often because you're trying to get health out of it. But let's say you're already at 800 health, the maximum HP you can get out of your grasp, right? What if you're already at that health and then we're just spamming it into any random bit of damage? Well, then it's just kind of waste the ability. So what we want to do instead, and there's a lot of other times that we can be using our shield. We use it when the primary thing is we use it when us or our team are actually in danger. So that's going to be things like abilities and ultimates, which we can block, that are super high value things to block. We can block against high amounts of burst damage if you know that you or your team really can't just get around corners and things like that. You can use it as you're trying to maybe push in or back out and play passive. You can use it if you or your teammates are in danger. Being in danger is not always the same thing as being low HP, right? I can be 1 HP and hiding around the corner and perfectly safe. Or I can be full HP and right next to a Diva Bomb and very much in danger, right? There's Usually, though, health does indicate danger. It does participate. It does impact your danger level. So pay attention to how much in danger am I and my teammates at. And then that's when we're going to want to shield. So the idea is that we're not just plopping it up every single time we have it available, and we're not
Okay.
just putting it out there for every little bit of spam, but we're using it for when it's actually going to get value, and then using cover any other time. That all make sense?
Yeah, I got you.
Gotcha.
So another thing. So yeah, so when we're not like too much crazy shit is going on, just kind of take some hits, let the supports heal. Don't pull the shield out yet.
Yeah, exactly. Use cover. Try to use grasp to approach, right? That sort of thing. If you're using cover, you're just going to take much less damage, which might mean that you need less shield as well. Another some tinier other things to add in. Play off of corner. When you play off of corners are going to be great, or just cover in general. They allow you to do things like this, where you can put your shield halfway around the corner or inside the wall, and what this does is it means that now they can only shoot at half your shield, which means they have less to spam and it will stay alive longer.
Mm,
So that's one way that can preserve your shield life a tad bit more. Now it's still probably going to get shredded pretty fast because it's low health. But that's just going to be another way that you can preserve it a bit longer. Playing up near cover as well will encourage your team to play by cover. So imagine the difference between here, where as the tank, or the only tank on our teams kind of naturally fall in line behind us. They're gonna follow us around. So if we're standing right here and our shield breaks, well, now us and our entire team are out in the open. Whereas if we're positioning over here on the corner, well, now our teams kind of naturally follow behind us because they're gonna be like, oh, I want to use the shield, and then therefore if shield goes down, well, now they're naturally closer to cover too, right? So
okay.
that more reasons why corners and cover is great. Right.
Mm,
All
cool.
right.
Welcome to Ready for Battle.
So notice here, I was just we don't really have too much. Possibly going through right room might be a decent idea if we're trying to get there a bit easier. Okay, we swap to Orisa. Okay, make sure you're grouping up with our team. So if we see these guys are going right side, maybe a good idea to go right side and join them rather than kind of splitting us off and splintering. Because now if we go down main, well, we're not gonna have like any teammates with us, and we're not gonna have healing. It's gonna make it much more difficult. So if we see our teammates are up ahead of us, make sure we're grouping up with them. Unless it's a character or situation where, like, of course they're gonna want to be on the flank. Like for example, if you had your whole team with you, well, then going down main, or like the rest of your team, like if you had your two other teammates, well, then this might not be as bad because you would actually have healing, right, and team support. But here, now this just means you're kind of solo, and then you're going to have trouble with, 1v2ing the Mercy Orisa. So just be a bit careful of going in on your own. Okay. Here we're tunneling in on the Orisa. So, now, I don't know how persistent this is going to be of a thing. A lot of times it will be, so it's handy to go over it anyways. But target priority, right? Who should we be looking at? Who should we be shooting at? Generally speaking, the two most important things within target priority are the highest value things to kill and the easiest things to kill. And usually, even easiest takes the priority between the two. Highest value could be something like maybe this character has an ultimate that they have available, and therefore they're high priority. Or maybe they're just fragging and doing a lot of things and carrying. Or maybe it's a high impact character, like maybe it's a Pharah Mercy, and Pharah Mercy sometimes can do a lot to kill, do a lot if uncontested, right? Um,
Yeah.
and then if you're just talking roles, usually tank, because it's kind of that 2-in-1. It's not to say that tank's like necessarily the best role, but highest burst potential, burst value. They can get value the fastest and easiest out of the character, out of the roles. So tanks usually have very high value in killing. But at the same time, if we flip flop this now and we go to who's the easiest to kill, tanks are also by design the hardest things to kill. Right? They have 2 to 3 times the health of other characters. They have armor. They have shields and tanking abilities, and they're going to be able to get healed the easiest. So if we're sitting here shooting at Orisa, we're just going to go tickle, 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 and then she's going to survive for the next 10, 20 seconds while she's getting healed by Mercy. Whereas if we, for example, looked at the Mercy who's right in front of us, who's below half HP, we hit her with a spear, she's dead.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of instantaneous. So we want to make sure that we're just prioritizing those squishier targets, not in any and all ways. We can look at the tanks if they're low, out of position, if they're the only thing we can shoot at, like let's say Orisa's right on top of us, well then we don't really have a choice in the matter. But if you have equal opportunity, such as right now, this is an example of equal opportunity, right? You can equally choose to shoot at Mercy or Orisa. That we want to look at the easier target. And then also you want to do your best to seek out the easier targets as well, which maybe we can discuss, but all that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah. So here, we just spend so much time. If we just look over at Mercy here, that's a kill that we could actually secure. Whereas Orisa, we're probably not gonna be able to do too much here.
Gotcha.
Yeah. See, we're just kind of tickling her at the moment, and then we also want to be just disengaging here. There's no reason to continue to try to duel her when. Don't take duels where you know you're at a disadvantage, right? You take duels where you're either at a neutral or an advantage. Maybe if you're at a minor disadvantage. But you never want to take them at a disadvantage, because if you're at a disadvantage, then you're more likely to lose. Right? Why would you actively walk into a fight that you know you're more likely to lose, rather than just backing off, running away, regrouping, etc.? So what are things that cause advantages? Disadvantages, is it a 2v1? Yeah, right here it's a 2v1. Right here it's Mercy Orisa versus you. She has healing, you don't. Who has more health, who has more abilities, who maybe they have an ultimate, who has the surprise, the jump on the other person, that sort of thing. Which character is naturally better at dueling, that sort of thing. So it'll kind of all depend. But here, when it's us versus Orisa, she has the clear advantage here, so we probably just want to be running away, not continuing to try to fight her, because it's just gonna get us killed by them eventually here. Because we kind of push back in rather than turning around and running away, and then we get melted and die. So you just want to make sure we're grouping up. Maybe. I think we sent over his head. Okay. At that point, fight's pretty much already lost. We kind of lost it by staggering that last fight because we never got a full regroup with our team. Okay. Make sure we're getting up. Question: was this a competitive game or quick play?
Yes. This
Yes.
one was competitive.
Okay, make sure that we're just walking out of spawn with our team, because this happened both rounds as well, so I'm not sure how consistent of a thing that is. Not sure if you had something going on in the background. Of course, there's tons of things that could be happening, if it's a family member, dog, or something like that. But in any case, do your best to actually walk out of spawn with your team, because as you saw in the last game, we walked out of spawn super late, super delayed, and then by the time we got to the fight, we were already down teammates. Teammates were already dead, right? Because when we're down a player that's putting our team at a disadvantage, right now our team's down 2 players. So we have something really simple that can help us to actually be able to participate is just, getting out there, making sure we're watching a timer and not lagging out of spawn. And then that can get us, at least 2 extra fights in this game.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm noticing that we're missing a lot of our abilities, such as rock and javelin throw. So why don't like we discuss? Firstly, let's just stress the importance of if you're not ever landing it, it's not going to do anything, right? We need to be able to connect it for it to get value. And I do like we're not holding on to it. We are using them, but I think we have yet to actually land it. So, and most of the time it's looking like it's missing. I think we threw one javelin into Arissa's spin and she ate it up. So watch for that. Make sure we're not throwing it into something that can eat it, like Arissa spin out, or even know if I remember the javelin spin, I guess is the name of it. But in any case, the rest of them seem like we're just missing them. So we could say a couple things within this. Firstly, make sure we're putting more effort into it, right, and concentrating on how we're throwing our rocks. Additionally, pay attention to how they're moving. And make sure that we're throwing it ahead of them. We want to lead our shots. So, because they are projectiles, our javelin throw and our rock, the further away we get from an enemy, we want to be aiming further ahead of where they're moving. So here, we don't want to be throwing it behind where Arissa's going, right? We want to be throwing it ahead of where Arissa's going. So that would be to the left here. So we want to pay attention to kind of where is Arissa moving. She stopped moving forwards. She started moving to the side. So we want to aim to the side. So here we're just not really, it doesn't look like we're kind of paying attention to where Arissa's going. And then we want to lead the shot, aim ahead of where we know she's ahead of where she's moving. We're not really seeming to have the same issues with our regular tracking. Most of our regular tracking seems fine. So we'll maybe go over some more stuff as well with that as we go through.
Gotcha. Cool.
Okay, notice the targeting of Arissa first thing, right, and only thing, and then look at her health bar, right? We haven't looked at anything else yet, and therefore nothing else has died. This alone, the swapping up of target priority, is going to significantly up the amount of stuff that you actually do, because things will actually die now. If you take out the team, well, then you'll actually be able to kill the Orisa. So make sure we're not getting caught up in shooting at the tank unless we have set opportunity to.
The barrier's weakened.
Misery made manifest.
Nice rock.
Inevitable, as all things are. Barrier is nearly spent.
Okay, good E. Notice how we're kind of just wasting that shield though. Kind of just tossing into their team. This is once again in a situation where this isn't really against anything in particular. No one here is in danger. Briss is not. They're just kind of shooting into it, and then therefore that's kind of just waste the shield. So now we don't got it for when we need it. Probably could be chucking in a rock right about now. Just don't hold on to the ability. It's not something we want to be holding on to. Okay. So two things here. Firstly, make sure that we're paying attention to where our teammates are.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to group up.
With us, right? So if we're pushing when it's a 3v5, 3v5 is lost fight, right? We can't take that. So we want to
Yeah.
make sure that we have our whole team. Therefore, before you ever anytime you ever push forwards, you always want to do a quick 360 check. Do I have my team with me? Right? Because then if we do a quick 360, we go, oh, never mind, I don't have my team. Well, then we don't push into their spawn. We don't end up dying. That solves a lot of problems for us. And then if we do have our team, then that's a little bit, maybe we're able to do that. Important thing here is that we don't have our team with us. Now, additionally, what range of a character is Sigma?
He's definitely like in the maybe mid range.
Yeah, more of a mid-range character, right? Because long range, he can't really technically do long range because
Mhm.
his orbs cap out at a distance, right? And then he's not going to be able
Yeah.
to do any damage if you're playing long ranges. I'm trying to remember what the orb range is. I'm thinking 20, maybe 25 meters is his orbs. So that's a mid-range on his orbs. And then the other thing is he doesn't want to play close range because there's a lot of other characters to do close range better than him, such as Reinhardt, such as Zarya, such as Orisa, such as Reaper and Junkrat and Mei, right? Those sorts of characters will all do close range better than Sigma, and therefore he doesn't want to play close range. He wants to play to his specialty, which is
Mhm.
the mid range. Now, what range are we just playing this engagement at?
Mm,
The barrier cannot withstand much more.
maybe a little bit too close.
Yeah, this is a bit too close. This is within the close range at the moment.
Okay.
Just to give it like a quick, I guess, visualization of what those ranges look like. And then maybe we'll look around for something else to do here. But quick
Do I
visualization of
seek
the
answers
ranges.
when we do not
You
know the
can let's
question?
see. Firstly, what's your orb range? It's not 30. I don't think it's 25. This is 25 right here. Inch forwards. Okay, so we can tap people, but that's not really doing very much damage from here. So we move forwards, and then it looks like about 23,
Potential
22 meters, 23
wasted.
meters, right? Is your range, and this is the back end of your range, right? You can't play further than this. It's not gonna work out
Yeah.
well for you. But you probably also want to be like probably behind 15 meters, which is a little strange because Sigma actually has a really tight range, or maybe we'd say like 10 meters at the closest, but even then that's a little bit too close for Sigma. So Sigma actually has a little bit of a tight range, which is usually a little uncommon. But he has
Mhm.
this like 23 to 15 meters roughly. Because once you get within 15 meters now, this is close range. And if that's a brawl character, they're going to be able to run on us pretty easily from this range, right?
Yeah.
So just make sure trying to stay past that range and playing further back, like over here. And then that way we're
Actuating
going to
the
be able to
barrier.
keep them at that distance. Now, additionally, let's go over no man's land and choke point defense and offense because it seems like we're maybe having a problem with those. Or have you're a bit newer to the game. Have you heard people using the term choke yet?
Um, I don't think so.
Don't think so. All good.
Yeah.
So a choke point is gonna be something that looks a bit like this right here, and it's essentially this tiny little enclosed area that the enemy team has to push through. That acts as a funnel. So, I don't know if you know map names yet. Do you know the big castle map Eichenwalde?
Yeah.
Yep. So on the first point of Eichenwalde, there's that little bridge that you have to walk underneath to get to the first point, right, on attack. That is an example of what you'd call a choke point, where you kind of have to go through this tiny little area right here, and you don't really have many other options. And that means that all of your damage on your team gets funneled into this tiny little area, and it's not really great positioning. You're going to take extra damage there, right? The tinier area, the more condensed the damage. Now, uh, therefore, it's not a great place to hold. So, how do you want to defend this, right? If we're, for example, let's say we're defending on this back end of this choke point here, points over here or something. If we push
The
all the way up
barrier
here,
appears.
right? Does the enemy team need to walk through the choke?
Yeah. They still do.
They still do. Do they need to walk through to get the point?
Yeah. They
Yeah.
they need to
Okay.
walk through, but I'm gonna be like right in the spawn, and
Yeah.
right.
Well, let's
And then,
ignore the spawn and ignore the spawn.
oh, okay.
Let's just say that this is they have own space. If we're holding at the front
Okay.
end, okay, yes, they have to walk through to get the point. Do they have to
Mhm.
walk through to win the fight or to kill you?
Um, they do have to. They have to walk through to win the fight to get to the point, right?
Well, the point is to win the fight. The point is in not, and this is something as well to maybe get through your head a little bit because usually a
Mhm.
lot of newer, lower ranked players, they kind of correlate the two. Capping point and winning fight are two different things, right? They're not interconnected. You can cap point and lose the fight, or you can, I mean, and then usually, always, if you win the fight, you cap point as a result, right? That's
Yeah.
almost always the result, right? So objective isn't the objective. Ironically, the objective is not the objective of the fight. The objective of the fight is to win the fight because you get the objective as that side bonus, right? So
Yeah.
if we are standing right here, do they have to walk through the choke to kill us?
No, they don't.
No, they do not. Okay. So let's say our whole team is here, or maybe it's just us and we die, right? Do they have to walk through to win the fight, or to therefore win the fight and get the point? Do they have to do that?
No, they don't.
No, they don't, right? Because we're so far forwards that they can kill us and then just walk through afterwards, right? They don't have to. They're not forced to walk through. And then let's say we start taking damage and we start backing up. Well, now we start backing up through the choke point, which is bad positioning, right? So we make it so that if we're holding up here, they do not need to push through the bad positioning, and we do need to push back up through the bad positioning, right? So it flip-flops them and puts us in the bad positioning, and our team as well, right? Same thing if we're holding in the middle, right? We don't want to hold in the middle either, but instead we want to hold at the back end of the choke. Sometimes if it's a bit, this is a bit long of a choke, so this is fine right here. Sometimes if it's a bit smaller, like let's say, see how this is long, let's say it's a bit skinnier of a choke, even holding back further might be a better idea to bait them to walk through. But, oh, that is very loud. Sorry, one second. Why is that popping up? I don't have, sorry, I had system sound. It was very, very loud there. I need to turn that off. All right. So we want to bait them to walk through it, and then that way we get so much damage off on them as they walk through, right? Then, let's see what else is there. Then there's also No Man's Land, which acts very similarly. And No Man's Land is essentially any long stretch of space that doesn't have cover in the middle of it, right? So this right here, from here to there, is a long stretch of space where if you're just walking down the middle, there's not much cover to use, right? And most like payload paths, for example, are going to follow and be in No Man's Land. And if we, for example, let's say that this back here is the objective and we're defending, why would we hold up here and once again have to walk backwards through this poor positioning, and also make it so that they don't have to walk through it, right? So once again, there's a disadvantage. Same thing as the choke point usage. Same thing, we're holding the middle. So instead, we're going to want to hold on the back end so that they have to push through this long open space into us, right? So this puts them at that disadvantage. And once again, also, preferences are medium range as well. Now, let's say we're attacking these, when we're attacking them, you want to make sure that we're just trying to get it through it as fast as possible. Don't sit in it, because if we're just sitting here for the 20 seconds, then we're taking a lot of unnecessary damage. We're also going to want to make sure we're using cover as we're approaching. So maybe we're using cover like down here. As we're approaching through this No Man's Land, we're not just going to walk straight down the middle. Maybe we approach and we come from the side here, right? Maybe we take a second to recharge up, get our health back. We walk from this cover to that cover, and then now we're close enough to do stuff, right? So we're walking from cover to cover, trying to get across it as fast as possible, rather than maybe just walking straight down mid. So that might take less damage on your approach, right? So all that makes sense about how to defend and attack in those scenarios.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
Yep, and those are gonna be kind of scattered across the different maps, so keep your eye open for them. All right, let's see.
Welcome to.
Okay, so here, for example, right, this is an example of, like, this right here would kind of be a No Man's Land, right? So this wide open space this entire area, if they're in the middle of it, the only bit of cover is this little thing, right? And that's about it, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing else unless they're like going through these outer corridors and things like that. So therefore, if we're trying to defend, we're not going to want to push all the way up to the front where now we have to walk backwards through this. We want to defend maybe from like back here where we can go poke, 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 and then we just run around the corner and we go poke, 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 and then we back up even further and we now look at this. This is once again a choke point right here. So it goes from choke to no man's land to another choke to maybe a tinier no man's land right here. I mean, not as much, but more space for them to have to run through to you. And then once again, another choke right here, right? And that mirrors itself on both sides. So therefore, we're going to not want to hold all the way up front and just let them walk into you rather than pushing into their spawn. Unless you have a major advantage that you're pushing on, like if you're cleaning them up, you're just getting that last kill. But here they have their whole team with them. Okay, so we get bailed out. Kind of not using cover, wasting shield. And notice how we're just kind of tunnel vision on the Orisa again. Not really noticing the Bastion to our left. Make sure we're keeping our eyes and ears open. Bastion just kind of shreds us from the side. Once again, kind of just pushed up a little far. So,
Yeah.
pushed up. Don't really got abilities to use. Not paying attention to our side. And then that just kind of leads to our death. Okay. Let us talk about how do you tell whether or not you've won or lost a fight. This is very important info to know because it's going to really make a big difference across your games if you know how to identify that. So let's real quickly the primary thing when it comes to knowing that is watching kill feed. Now, another setting that you can enable that would probably help with this, if you go to sounds, is going to sounds, play sound when enemy eliminated and play sound when teammate eliminated. Those should be on. This will give you another source of info that will give you a little ping sound that will differ in pitch depending on if it's teammate or enemy, and will also differ in pitch depending on how many are dead. So this is just an audio version of kill feed, but usually kill feed's still great to look at because it tells you who is alive, who is dead, and can tell you ultimates and abilities as well in there. But the main idea, the main concept is you want to look at kill feed, think, and watch for, are we up people or are we down people? When you are up 1 to 2 people, or down 1 to 2 people, right? Either way, up or down 1 to 2 people, that is an advantage or a disadvantage, in which case you play extra aggressive or extra passive. And then in those cases, and then next step, right, is watching for 2 to 3. So if you're up or down 2 to 3 players, that is going to be a one fight or a lost fight. In one fight, you go extra aggressive, you push forwards, you've won the fight, so you can just go and clean them all up. If you've lost the fight, you get out if you can. If you cannot get out, you let them kill you. This is so you don't stagger yourself, which is I don't know if we necessarily have to go through all of that, but I guess let's go through that real quick. Staggering yourself's not great. Staggering yourself would be essentially dying late. So if you're dying different from your team, then your team all comes back from spawn, and then they have to decide: do we wait, in which case you've just wasted a bunch of time, or do we push, in which case they're down a player and more likely to lose the fight. And it can also start stagger trains where you die and then a teammate runs in and your team just kind of runs in 1 by 1 or 2 by 2 and then keeps dying over and over, and then you never get a fight in. Staggering is not great, and that can start with you. So get out if you can. If you can, let them kill you. And then final thing is don't use ultimates in won or lost fights. And we also don't want to walk back into a fight that we've already lost. So let's do a backup real quick and take a look at that. Right. So in this case, it is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 players versus 1, maybe 2.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Pay attention, watch as you're walking back from spawn. Do a quick 360. Look at your surroundings of where your teammates at.
Barrier initialized.
Yep. So we're also using our ultimate without our team.
Barrier has fallen. The barrier is weakened.
Okay, so there in this situation, it's kind of going unpunished, and we are getting our teammates back, kind of slowly here. So it didn't really get punished. But just note that the better opponents you start to get, the more that will get punished, and they will see that you're doing it, and then they'll push forwards and kill you, much more efficiently than that in this case. And you want to play as if you're going up against those harder opponents, because that's firstly improvement if you do. Secondly, if you start to go up against those harder opponents, you're just not going to be able to hang if you already have bad habits formed. So those bad habits will start to get punished, and then you're going to be losing those games rather than already being prepared for it, and then being able to actually hang out against harder opponents and whatnot. So just note that just because it's not punished doesn't mean it's not a mistake. Okay, good eat once again. Okay, nice. Notice, once again, no cover at all. Kind of focusing in on Orisa. A little hard. Watch your health bar. Request, I would recommend binding I need healing. Getting your supports to look at you faster when you press that. Make sure you're using cover and whatnot. Yep, so we're not getting killed. Oh, that's a situation where you can shield. Right, if we're low HP, so make sure we're
Yeah.
paying attention to our health bar, right? Use cover, use your shield, make sure watching where enemies are at.
It's go time.
Okay, kind of stood on the dragon a little bit there. Took a lot of extra health off of us. Watch sending shield too far forwards. Here we send shield too far forwards, and that just lets Orisa walk through it. So you usually, not always, but usually shield just wants to be plopped like right in front of us. So you kind of just tap it and let it go right in front of you. Okay. Yeah. There, we just kind of sit in the dragon a little too long, and then Orisa boops us into it. Okay, once again. Now she does Valk here, but notice how we're shooting at the Bastion over the Mercy. Now, once Mercy Valks, then Bastion becomes the better option. But before she Valks, then Mercy's the better option over Bastion, because Bastion has more health, armor, and Mercy's gonna be pocketing him, right? So shoot at the Mercy instead. Much faster of a kill. Once you get out of the ring, pull the shield back so it's not just taking unnecessary damage. That would be like, if you are running away from a diva bomb and you get around the corner, but you still leave your shield up, right? Not really protecting anything if you're already out of it. Uh-oh, cover usage. Watch kind of standing still. Notice how we kind of just stand for it. Make sure that you are strafing. This is now you're on controller, but the terminology for it, apologies for the PC terminology, is AD strafing. So that would just be left, right, left, right, left, right. So this is in opposition to just kind of standing still. Because if we're just standing still, we're gonna get shot at and headshot super easily, right? But if we're moving left and right, well then we're gonna be, even if we're staying in the same spot, we're making it much more difficult for them to hit us. So make sure that we're strafing and not just standing still. It's going to keep us alive. So far, we've died quite a bit. And we want to look to avoid deaths. I think we've died, I don't know, in this game, in this round, oh, I don't even know how many times so far. We died, I think, 2 or 3 times on first one, maybe like 4 or 5 times on second one. Let's say it's about 8, roughly, something like that. Maybe 7, give or take 1. Um, so why don't we talk real quick about deaths, survivability?
Hmm.
Obviously everybody knows it's bad to die. It's not a good thing, but a lot of times I find it's important to stress why and how, and why it's bad to die, and then we'll go into how to avoid it. Um, Deaths are worse than you think they are. When you die, it is 10 seconds of respawn time, but it's not just that, it's also 10 seconds of walk back time where you are getting back to the fight, which is roughly 20 seconds per death. If we, for example, died 8 times so far in an 8-minute game, then that means that'd be 20 times 8. I guess let's do the full. Let's just continue and make this a bit easier to visualize. Let's say this is, we keep the death rate up of 1 a minute, roughly speaking. And we in total get like 15 or 14 deaths. Let's just do 14. Give you one under. So 14 deaths times 20, and then divided by 60 would mean that during this game you spent an entire 4 minutes and 40 seconds dead. In 4 minutes and 40 seconds, that's a lot of time. That would
Hmm.
be about, if you're playing with a 15-minute game timer, that would be almost 1/3 of your entire game that you're dead, right? Which is a lot of time. That in that time you could be getting, maybe like 2 ultimates, or possibly a bit more, right? You could be getting a lot of kills, a lot of elims, a lot of damage, and everything within that. And then additionally, on top of that, when you're dying, it's not just a lack of value where you're doing nothing, it's also negative value. It's negative impact because your team, because you die, is now at a disadvantage, and now they're more likely to lose the fight. It's your impact on losing the fight when you die. You lose your ability to carry and win. So therefore, deaths are really, really bad. Want to look to die less and less. If we cut down on that, let's say we cut down by, if we die 14 times, let's say we get that down to 10. Well, now we've just gotten ourselves an extra minute and 20 seconds back, right? It's
Hmm.
it's going to add a lot of time to our gameplay if we are cutting down on deaths. Um, Things that cause deaths. What would you say are a couple things that like cause deaths for the average person typically?
Mm, I would say for sure. I would say for me, it's when I get caught somewhere, or definitely like a high damage character comes up, like so Jordan can pretty much melt me down, or Bastion, or headshots, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Like earlier when I didn't put my shield up.
Hmm.
Um,
So high damage. Well, that's not necessary. So that's um more so the cause of. I'm trying to think of how to articulate that. Um, that's not a you thing. Think more so in terms of your gameplay, not
mhm,
necessarily what is physically killing you. You're not thinking about what is actually blowing. Like if you die, for example, to a diva bomb, I'm not
mhm,
asking you what killed you. And the answer is the diva bomb. I'm asking you what could you have done to not get killed by diva bomb. So the question is,
yeah,
what part of your gameplay kills you? What is the defect, the lack, in your gameplay that is causing you to die?
yeah. Then yeah. I would say bad positioning,
Yep.
and
Hmm.
yeah, lack of cover. What that is, but yeah,
Yeah, poor
mainly
positioning,
cover.
lack
Yeah.
of cover. Other ones to add in, such as when the Bastion mowed you down from the side,
Hmm.
lack of awareness, not knowing our surroundings, or um, over aggression, right? Running in really far without your team. Misuse of abilities, such as if we just use our shield and ability, and then we kind of just sit out in the open without abilities. And then finally, another one, maybe another minor one would be something like a poor movement, such as like standing still into the Hanzo storm arrows, right? So thinking through all these different things, and then the solution usually just the opposite of that. So you died because you were out in the open, well, use cover, right? You died
Mhm.
because you weren't paying attention, well, now we're going to pay attention, and then hopefully we don't die at that point. So we want to make sure we're looking to apply that, because that will stop us from dying as much. Let's talk application real quick. How do you put this stuff into practice and play? You're going to work on this stuff because maybe survivability seems a bit vaguer, right? And maybe it's a bit more difficult to think about, like, how do I just not die, or how do I be aware of my surroundings, or something like that. Maybe seems a bit vague. You're going to work on these things by making sure that while you're playing, you're actively focusing on things you're trying to work on. That
Mhm.
means that you're not going to autopilot, and contrary to popular belief, you're not going to purely play to win, because that kind of just leads to stagnation. Whereas when you play to improve, you actually end up winning more. And then what that will look like within your gameplay is you're going to be thinking to yourself, you're gonna pick something out, like let's say survivability. You're gonna think to yourself, stay alive, stay alive, stay alive, cover, 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 awareness, awareness, awareness. Where's my team at? Abilities, abilities. You're gonna give yourself a constant stream of reminders to think about what you're trying to work on. Think about staying alive, thinking about cover, right? Thinking through those things. And as you think through it, and you do that, well, you'll probably notice you're going to stay alive a bit more than you are, right? If you're thinking about staying alive and you're putting effort into it. Now, that will form it as a habit. Once it forms into a habit, then you don't really need to think about it as much, it just kind of comes naturally, and you can move on to something else to work on.
Yeah.
Now, final thing is, don't try to do everything all at once. That'll be way too overwhelming. Instead, focus on one category of things, or 1 to 3 smaller things within a category. Any questions? And that'll make sense?
Yeah. That that sounds great. Um,
hmm
I would say I think like attacking wise, definitely the hardest part of Sigma for me is being consistent and accurate with his primary fire.
hmm Yeah. So, working on mechanics. When do we exit out here? Working on Sigma mechanics, we can say a couple things here. Um, Firstly, once again, same as your E, it's a projectile, right? So we have to
Do I see
aim. We
answers
can't
to
just
any
aim on top. But when the further away we get from people, now if we're right next to them, and you're gonna have to adjust with the different projectile speeds because they all move differently. But if we're right on top of somebody, I can aim right on top of this guy, right? But
Cosmically
if they start to get a bit
insignificant?
further away, and we're aiming right on top of this guy, we'll notice how we just kind of trail behind, right? We're not
Hmm.
actually hitting them. So we want to aim ahead of where they're moving. That way we're actually able to connect with them, make sure we're trying to hit both shots and we're tracking
Lost to the
them, not just
cosmos.
hitting the first shot and then letting the second shot go off into nothingness. You want to make sure we're going for both shots, not just one. If you land your rock, that's gonna be a way to get easy shots in, because you can rock and then go shot. And I
Satan.
believe, is that still a one-shot combo, or is that looked like it just one-shot him? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. I thought, did they add that back in? Rock, shot. Oh, they must have. Yeah, they removed that at one point, so I guess they did add that back in. So go for rocks, try to hit those, and that'll lead to more kills. Go for that combo, right, of rock, shoot while they're on the ground. Um, so that's a couple things. Do you typically warm up before you
Inevitable,
start playing
as all things are.
competitive?
Much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you warm up in? What do you do?
Um, mostly
I'll take
just quick
victory
play
one by
matches,
one.
and then a
The
little bit in the
universe does not
practice
revel when the
range.
sun
Okay.
sets.
I would say a couple things. Firstly, don't do practice range.
Maker.
Practice range is really bad because it's just slow moving bots that move in predictable patterns with big hitboxes. So it's not really going to be a
Barrier
effective. It's not gonna be a
initialized.
challenge at all. It's just gonna kind of be really easy, and then you're going to it's not going to be accurate to actual players' movements. And then also quick play, I probably wouldn't recommend either for a warm-up, because the primary thing that you're trying to warm up is your mechanics, not really your game sense per se. You're warming up your mechanics, you're trying to get your mechanics in tune, because your mechanics kind of go away overnight. They kind of start to rust up, and you're essentially de-rusting your aim.
Yeah.
And therefore you want to do something that's more aim intensive than quick play, and has less of a overall game dynamic. So quickly you have to worry about teammates and objectives and all your ability usages and everything, which kind of distracts from your aim. Whereas I might recommend something more like try hard free for all, or regular deathmatch, or aim arena, or 1v1 arena, or things like that. Those different modes will offer a more aim intensive game mode option that won't have any objectives or teammates to worry about. It'll just kind of be you and your aim, which will just allow you to warm that up a bit more effectively. And then also I'd recommend maybe doing those while you're in queues and whatnot to just practice at your aim. And then once again, make sure you're putting attention and effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
It all makes sense. Any questions?
Yeah. I think that's everything for right now.
Okay. We're coming up on the end of the session, so we're going to do a quick review, go over the main points, and then wrap up the session. So, ability usage. Grasp, pretty solid. Not honestly better than usual for a new player. Not really many issues with it. Rock. Want to make sure you're landing that more often. We just talked about all the different ways. Lead it. Make sure the further away you're arcing it as well. You have to aim it up in the air the further away they are. Then besides that, make sure that you're putting effort into it. Combo into your rock. Don't shoot it at the tank all the time, maybe. Shield. Think about the different reasons to use it. Use it for danger. When your team's in danger, when you're pushing, when you're backing, when you're blocking abilities and ultimates, etc. Right? Make sure you're just not using for random spam. Overall abilities, kind of like a lower end of medium priority for you to work on. Nothing massive with abilities there. We played Orisa briefly. Pretty much same thing with a Javelin. Just make sure you're putting more effort into landing it, because we missed a lot of those. The other abilities we weren't on Orisa long enough to see. Sigma Ultimate, I only saw one of those. Just make sure we're not using them in between fights. We're using them during fights. Don't use it if you've already won or lost the fight. So if we're running back in and we're the only ones alive, probably don't want to be using it. Because there's not going to be anyone to shoot at it with. But besides that, I didn't really get to see too many of those. So overall, not really a big priority, right? Lower end of things to work on. Then we got your mechanics. We just talked about that a second ago, right? Make all the things we were just discussing with your left clicks. Besides that, target priority was a massive thing, right? Shooting at the right targets at the right time. Not shooting at the Orisa the entire game, which we did. Right, going for the easier targets to shoot at, unless we have no other option, or the tanks are now the easy things to shoot at, right? They're low, out of position, but go for them, the squishies, when you have equal opportunity, or try to seek them out. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Overall, that was a medium high priority. It was that was especially the target priority was the big thing there. And then normal shots as well was just something to work on. Then we got your positioning. Make sure keeping your proper range on people, right? That's gonna be 15 to 23 meters. Make sure trying to keep that on people, not get too close, not too far. Then besides that, make sure we're respecting no man's lands and choke points, right? So holding on the back when we're defending, holding on the back end, not on the front or the middle of both of them. Make sure that we are using cover. Good positioning is the usage of cover. Bad positioning is the absence of cover. We didn't really, I don't think we really got on the ending maps that too many high grounds, but high grounds is also fantastic. Look to use those whenever you have the option and it's in the fight. Look to take high grounds. Overall, there's a lot more within your positioning, and that will set up your survivability, and then it'll also set up your ability to actually shoot at things and stay alive and do things. Overall positioning is probably like a medium-high priority. Then comes your awareness, paying attention to your health bar, bind, I need healing, that's a great one to have bound. Make sure that you are paying attention to where is your team at, do a 360 before you're pushing aggro. Make sure you're keeping your eyes and ears open of where's your team at, where's the enemy team at. Watch kill feed. 1 to 2 is an advantage or disadvantage. 2 to 3 is a won or lost fight. Go in super aggro if you're winning. If you've lost, get out if you can. If you can't, let them kill you. Don't use ults in won or lost fights. And then all the other odds and ends within awareness. Overall, that one was probably going to be... trying to think here. In between is probably like higher end of a medium or even lower end of a medium high is kind of in between that. And then finally, also survivability. Make sure you're looking to stay alive and do things. Watch for your, awareness and your positioning and all that. Make sure you're just trying to stay in there and do things. That one was pretty important. It probably goes to like a higher end of a medium. So to put that all in order, number 1 is probably going to be positioning. Number 2 is going to be awareness. And then kind of the subsequent aggression within that will kind of stem from it. And then because those two things will hopefully fix a lot of your survivability, I'm not actually going to put survivability next because I hope like those two should affect survivability a lot. So positioning, then awareness, then number 3 is probably going to be your mechanics. And we'll do maybe mechanics / survivability. We'll kind of tie those up. And then next will come your abilities, and then all usage, not really something we discussed too much. Really something to worry about. All makes sense. Any questions before we wrap up?
Yeah. Yeah, that all sounds great. Do you have any advice for just like the best situations to use Sigma's ult during?
Watch for them to be grouped up, right? You want to get as many people in it as possible. Generally speaking, you want to use it at the start of fights. Start of fights is best, and that's for most ultimates. Mid fight is okay. Late fight is situational. Between fights, which would include before the fight begins, that's very rare. Would you ever want to do that? And so you use it at the start of the fight. Try to wait. Don't ult and then expect them to all run into each other. Wait for them to group up. Then you ult. When you ult, shoot them once in the air. Shoot them once when they drop, right? You're not going to have enough time to shoot them twice in the air. So shoot them once in the air, shoot them once on the floor when they're stunned. Can I answer the question?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Anything else?
Double kill.
I don't think so. I think we pretty much went over everything.
Okay.